The sound of the wooden gavel crashed down against the judicial bench with the force of thunder, reverberating through the packed federal courtroom in San Diego. Judge Mason Blake's face had turned an alarming shade of crimson, the veins in his neck bulging, as he pointed a trembling finger at the woman sitting quietly in a wheelchair before him. "You dare to wear a silver star into my courtroom?" His voice carried the kind of venom reserved for the most heinous criminals, each word deliberately pronounced, as if the very act of speaking them caused him physical pain. "Stolen valor is a federal crime. Do you honestly expect me to believe that someone like you, a disabled woman in a wheelchair, was ever a Navy SEAL?" Sarah Mitchell remained perfectly still in her wheelchair, her brown eyes maintaining steady contact with the judge's furious gaze. She wore a simple navy blue blazer that had seen better days, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation-style bun that suggested military precision despite her civilian attire. The silver star pinned to her lapel caught the harsh fluorescent lighting of the courtroom, creating small reflections that danced across the wooden panels behind the judge's bench. "Remove it immediately!" Blake's voice escalated to something approaching a roar. "Bailiff Carter, if she refuses to comply with this direct order, I want you to confiscate that medal right now." The courtroom fell into an absolute silence so complete that the humming of the air conditioning system suddenly seemed deafening. 50 people, lawyers in expensive suits, veterans in worn jackets adorned with their own service medals, reporters with notebooks poised, family members of various defendants, all held their collective breath as they witnessed this unprecedented confrontation. Several veterans seated in the gallery exchanged troubled glances, their weathered faces reflecting a deep unease at what they were witnessing. Yet none dared to speak up against Judge Blake, whose reputation for destroying careers and lives from his position of ultimate courtroom authority was legendary throughout the Southern District of California. Sarah slowly raised her right hand toward the medal, her fingers pausing for just a moment as they made contact with the cool metal. Something flickered across her features, a shadow of memory, perhaps, or the ghost of pain long suppressed, before she lowered her hand back to her lap without removing the decoration. She had not spoken a single word. "I will hold you in contempt of this court," Blake threatened, leaning forward over his bench until his shadow fell across Sarah's seated form. "You have exactly 10 seconds to remove that fraudulent piece of metal from your person before I have you arrested and charged with impersonating a member of the United States military." 10, 9, 8... But everything was about to change in the next 20 minutes, in ways that would shatter every assumption in that courtroom and expose truths that some had worked very hard to keep buried. Sarah had been wheeled into courtroom 7 at precisely 9 o'clock that morning, not as a defendant or plaintiff, but as a witness in what should have been a routine veteran benefits case. James Rodriguez, a former Marine who had lost his left arm in an IED explosion outside Kandahar, was fighting the VA's denial of his disability claim. Sarah was there to testify about the inadequacy of support services for wounded veterans, drawing from what her lawyer had described only as personal experience with the system. The moment she had entered through the accessibility entrance, every eye in the courtroom had tracked her movement. There was something about the way she held herself in that wheelchair, spine straight despite the cushioned back support, shoulders squared in a way that suggested years of military bearing, that drew attention even as she clearly tried to avoid it. She had positioned herself at the witness table, folding her hands precisely in front of her, waiting to be called. That's when Judge Blake had first noticed the silver star. "Before we proceed with testimony," Blake had interrupted the defense attorney mid-sentence, his eyes locked on Sarah's lapel, "I need to address something that I find deeply disturbing. Ma'am, are you actually wearing a silver star in my courtroom?" Defense attorney Anderson, a thin man in his 50s who specialized in veteran cases, had immediately stood. "Your Honor, Ms. Mitchell is here as an expert witness on veteran affairs. Her decorations are—" "I didn't ask you, counselor," Blake cut him off with the casual brutality of someone accustomed to absolute deference. "I asked her, though I notice she seems incapable of speaking for herself, perhaps because she knows that explaining her fraudulent display would constitute perjury." Sarah's fingers had moved across the table's surface in what might have been a nervous gesture, except for the deliberate precision of the movement. Ashley Foster, the court reporter, noticed it looked almost like sign language, though she couldn't read what it might mean. "I'm speaking now," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying a controlled calm that seemed to infuriate Blake even more. Her words were carefully measured, each one placed with the same precision as her folded hands. I am here to provide testimony relevant to— What you're here to do, Blake exploded, is to immediately remove that stolen valor from your person. I've seen enough cases of fraudulent disability claims and fake veterans to recognize a charlatan when one wheels into my courtroom. The gasp that rippled through the gallery was audible. Several veterans shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Mark Sullivan, a former Navy corpsman with graying temples and the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen too much, found himself leaning forward. Something about the way Sarah held herself, the complete absence of fidgeting or defensive body language despite Blake's verbal assault, triggered a memory he couldn't quite place. Your Honor, Anderson tried again, rising to his feet with a law book in hand. With all due respect, questioning a witness's military service without evidence. Sit down, counselor, before I hold you in contempt as well, Blake snapped. I run a courtroom of integrity, not a theater for attention seekers and benefit fraudsters to parade their fantasies. Sarah reached into her jacket pocket, a movement so smooth and economical that security guard Adam Foster found his hand instinctively moving toward his radio, recognizing the muscle memory of someone trained in tactical movement. She produced a small square of paper tissue, unfolded it with deliberate care, and began folding it into precise segments. The action was so mundane, so disconnected from the tension filling the room, that it created a surreal moment of cognitive dissonance. If you're watching from anywhere in America and believe our disabled veterans deserve respect, not humiliation in courtrooms, let us know your location in the comments below. This story isn't just about one woman's fight. It's about every veteran who's been dismissed because of how they look. Share this video if you believe true service deserves recognition, regardless of physical appearance. Blake's face had progressed from red to an alarming purple shade. Are you even listening to me? I asked you a direct question. What unit were you with? What was your MOS? When did you serve? Sarah finished folding the tissue, the result a perfect square with edges aligned to military precision, the kind of habit drilled into service members until it became unconscious. She placed it carefully on the table and looked up at Blake. I requested to present evidence, she said simply. 5 words, delivered without emotion. Evidence? Blake laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. What evidence could you possibly have? A Halloween costume receipt? A screenshot from a video game where you pretended to be a soldier? I've presided over dozens of stolen valor cases, and you all have the same pathetic excuses. Prosecutor Henry Fletcher, an ambitious man in his 30s who owed his rapid career advancement to Blake's mentorship, stood up with theatrical outrage. Your Honor is absolutely right. This is a clear case of contempt of court. This woman is making a mockery of our justice system and disrespecting every real veteran in this room. In the gallery, several phones had begun buzzing with text messages. Mark Sullivan noticed the woman next to him, glancing at her screen with widening eyes. But before he could see what had caught her attention, Blake's gavel crashed down again. Bailiff Carter, Blake commanded, his voice now deadly quiet in a way that was somehow more menacing than his shouting. Approach the witness and remove that medal. If she resists, arrest her for obstruction of justice, contempt of court, and fraudulent representation of military service. Daniel Carter, the bailiff, was a decent man who had served 2 tours in Iraq before joining court security. Every instinct in his body told him something was wrong with this situation. The way Sarah sat, the complete absence of panic despite the judge's threats, the small details like how she'd automatically checked every exit when she'd entered. These weren't the behaviors of a faker, but he had a job to do, and Judge Blake's word was law in this courtroom. As Carter reluctantly approached, Sarah spoke again, her voice carrying just loud enough for the court reporter to capture every word. Article 36, Uniform Code of Military Justice. Even civilians cannot be compelled to remove lawfully earned military decorations without due process. The legal reference was so specific, so technically accurate, that Blake actually paused. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. In the back row, someone was furiously typing on their phone, and Mark Sullivan could have sworn he heard them whisper, "Ghost Unit," to their companion. How dare you quote military law to me? Blake's composure finally shattered completely. You think memorizing a few regulations makes you a soldier? You think putting on a medal you bought online makes you a hero? You're nothing but a parasite, feeding off the sympathy meant for real warriors. Sarah's hand moved to her collar, adjusting it slightly. The movement revealed, for just a moment, a portion of what looked like scar tissue running along her neck and disappearing beneath the fabric. Adam Foster, the security guard, recognized the pattern immediately. He had seen enough burned victims at the VA hospital where he volunteered to know what improvised explosive device scars looked like. 15-minute recess, Blake announced suddenly, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. When we reconvene, Ms. Mitchell, you will either remove that metal voluntarily or you will be arrested and charged with multiple federal crimes. I suggest you use this time to consider whether your little charade is worth spending the next 5 years in federal prison. As people began to file out for the recess, Mark Sullivan remained in his seat, his mind racing. The way Sarah had said those 5 words, "I requested to present evidence," triggered something. He'd heard that exact phrase, delivered in that same controlled tone, somewhere before, somewhere important, somewhere that had involved life and death. Many disabled veterans struggle with mobility challenges daily. Advanced prosthetic technology has revolutionized rehabilitation, offering computerized limbs that respond to neural signals. These medical devices restore independence, allowing veterans to walk, run, and live fully again. Insurance coverage varies, but specialized veteran programs often provide financial assistance for these life-changing technologies. During the recess, the hallway outside courtroom 7 became a hub of frantic activity. Reporters who had come to cover a routine benefits case suddenly found themselves witnessing something far more dramatic. Several veterans had gathered in a tight group, their voices low but animated. "That's not how someone fakes military service," one of them was saying, an older man with a prosthetic leg visible below his shorts. "Did you see how she checked the exits? That's tactical awareness. That's training you can't fake." "But Blake's never wrong about these things," another veteran countered, though his voice carried uncertainty. "He's exposed dozens of fake veterans over the years." Mark Sullivan stood apart from the group, his phone in his hand, staring at a text message he'd just received from a contact at Naval Special Warfare Command. The message was brief. "Can't confirm or deny. Stop digging. This is above your clearance level." Meanwhile, in a small consultation room down the hall, Sarah sat alone in her wheelchair, her hands resting calmly on her lap. Anderson, her attorney, paced nervously beside her. "Sarah, you need to give me something to work with here," he pleaded. "Blake is serious about these charges. If you have documentation, any proof of service, now would be the time to—" "Mr. Anderson," Sarah interrupted gently, "everything will be clear soon. I need you to trust me for a little while longer." "Trust you? Sarah, he's going to have you arrested. This isn't just about the case anymore. Blake has made this personal. He's staking his entire reputation on proving you're a fraud." Sarah's lips curved into the faintest suggestion of a smile, not one of amusement, but of someone who had faced far worse situations than an angry judge. "Mr. Anderson, I've been in tighter spots than this. Sometimes the truth needs the right moment to be revealed." In his chambers, Judge Blake was on a secure phone call, his voice harsh and demanding. "I don't care what the initial search shows. There has to be something on this woman. Nobody just appears out of nowhere with a silver star and a wheelchair. Check the medical discharge records. Check the VA database. Check everything." The voice on the other end was hesitant. "Judge Blake, sir, we're hitting classified walls on every search. Whatever this Sarah Mitchell story is, it's locked behind security clearances we don't have access to." "That's impossible," Blake snarled. "She's a nobody, a faker looking for sympathy and a payday. Keep digging." But as he hung up the phone, a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. Classified walls didn't protect fictional service records. They protected operational security. They protected sensitive missions. They protected ghosts. The 15-minute recess stretched to 20 as Blake's staff scrambled to find any information on Sarah Mitchell. Every database query came back either empty or classified. It was as if she had materialized out of thin air, existing only in this moment, in this courtroom, wearing a medal that she either deserved or had stolen with an audacity that defied comprehension. When court reconvened, the atmosphere had shifted palpably. Word had spread through the courthouse about the confrontation, and the gallery was now packed beyond capacity. Several people stood along the back wall, including 3 men in sharp suits whose bearing suggested federal authority, even though they showed no badges. Blake returned to his bench with renewed determination, his jaw set in a hard line that suggested he had made a decision during the recess. Sarah was wheeled back to the witness table, still maintaining that unsettling calm that had characterized her throughout the morning's ordeal. "Ms. Mitchell," Blake began, his tone now coldly formal rather than openly hostile. "During the recess, my staff attempted to verify your military service record. Would you care to guess what they found?" Sarah remained silent, her gaze steady on Blake's face. "Nothing," Blake continued, a note of triumph creeping into his voice. "Absolutely nothing. No record of a Sarah Mitchell serving in the Navy SEALs. No record of a Sarah Mitchell receiving a Silver Star. You don't exist in any military database we can access. How do you explain that?" For the first time since entering the courtroom, Sarah's expression shifted slightly. Mark Sullivan, watching intently from the gallery, recognized it as the look of someone making a tactical decision, weighing risks, calculating outcomes, deciding whether to advance or hold position. "Some service records," Sarah said carefully, each word measured and deliberate, "are not accessible through conventional channels." "Oh, how convenient," Blake's mock surprise dripped with sarcasm. "Let me guess. You were part of some super-secret black ops unit that doesn't officially exist? You were such a classified operator that even your medals are classified?" A ripple of uncomfortable laughter went through parts of the gallery, though notably, none of the veterans joined in. They were watching Sarah's face, seeing something there that Blake, in his fury and certainty, was missing entirely. Still watching? Then you understand something's not right here. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to follow more stories of veterans who refuse to be silenced. Your support helps bring these hidden truths to light. Your Honor, Prosecutor Fletcher stood again, his voice oozing false concern. "This is clearly a disturbed individual who has constructed an elaborate fantasy around herself. The fact that she's disabled makes this even more tragic, using her wheelchair as a prop to gain sympathy while stealing the valor of real heroes." Sarah's fingers moved across the wheelchair's armrest in what looked like an unconscious gesture. But Adam Foster, still watching from his security position, recognized it as tactical sign language, the kind special operations units used for silent communication. She was signing a single word, over and over. "Wait." Connor Allen, an insurance investigator who specialized in fraudulent disability claims, suddenly entered the courtroom. Blake's face lit up with satisfaction as he recognized his secret weapon, the man he'd quietly called during the recess. "Your Honor," Allen announced, "I've been investigating Ms. Mitchell for suspected disability fraud for 3 months. She claims to have lost the use of her legs in combat, but I have surveillance footage of her performing physical activities that suggest her disability may be exaggerated for financial gain." The crowd murmured with a mix of shock and disgust. Sarah's expression didn't change, but her hand stilled on the armrest. "Mr. Allen," Blake said with barely concealed pleasure, "please share your findings with the court." Allen pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through files. "Ms. Mitchell receives full disability benefits from the VA, yet she's been observed engaging in activities that require significant lower body strength. She's been seen at a private gym at 4 a.m. when she apparently thinks no one is watching. A fake disability to go with fake military service," Blake proclaimed loudly. "The layers of deception just keep peeling away, don't they, Ms. Mitchell?" It was at that moment that Sarah's fingers began tapping against her wheelchair in a rhythmic pattern. Mark Sullivan's blood ran cold as he recognized it. Morse code. She was tapping out a message. 7. Ghost. 7. Sullivan shot to his feet so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. Every eye in the courtroom turned to him. "Your Honor," Sullivan's voice was shaking, not with fear, but with a combination of awe and disbelief. "I need to make a phone call. Right now. This is a matter of national security." Blake's gavel came down hard. "Sit down immediately, or I'll have you removed from my courtroom." "Your Honor, you don't understand," Sullivan pressed on, his face pale. "Ghost Unit 7, if she's really... Your Honor, please, one phone call. That's all I'm asking. Bailiff, remove this man from..." The courtroom doors burst open with enough force to make everyone jump. Admiral Ryan Carter strode in, his dress uniform immaculate, his chest decorated with ribbons that told the story of 30 years of naval service. Behind him walked 2 officers in similar dress uniforms and a woman in a severe black suit who carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of federal authority. Blake's face went from purple to white in the span of 3 seconds. "Admiral, this is a private court session. You have no authority to..." "Judge Blake," Admiral Carter's voice cut through the courtroom like a sword through silk, carrying the kind of command authority that made even Blake's judicial power seem small by comparison. "I'm here under direct orders from the Secretary of Defense. This courtroom is now under federal military jurisdiction, pending a classified security review. This is my courtroom. Blake's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of uncertainty creeping in. You can't just walk in here and... Admiral Carter had moved past Blake entirely, his attention focused completely on Sarah. What happened next sent a shockwave through every person present. The Admiral, whose rank and decorations marked him as one of the most senior officers in the Pacific Fleet, came to a complete stop 3 feet from Sarah's wheelchair and snapped to attention with military precision. Then, in a gesture that defied all protocol and hierarchy, he rendered a perfect salute. Sarah's response was subtle but profound. She straightened slightly in her wheelchair and returned the salute with her right hand, the movement crisp despite her seated position. "Commander Mitchell," the Admiral said, his voice carrying a mixture of respect and something that sounded almost like reverence. "I apologize for the delay in responding. We had to verify the situation through appropriate channels." The courtroom exploded in chaos. Cameras that had been surreptitiously recording despite court rules were now openly filming. Veterans in the gallery were on their feet, some saluting, others simply staring in shock. Blake's gavel pounded repeatedly, but the sound was lost in the uproar. "Commander," Blake's voice was barely audible above the noise. "She's a commander?" Admiral Carter turned to face Blake, and the contempt in his expression was barely concealed behind military professionalism. "Commander Sarah Mitchell, Navy SEALs, retired under medical discharge after Operation Neptune's Hammer, recipient of 3 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Purple Heart. The 4th Silver Star was approved but never officially presented due to the classified nature of the action in which it was earned." Sarah had still not spoken more than her few carefully chosen words, maintaining her silence as her truth was finally revealed. But her eyes, those calm, brown eyes that had never wavered under Blake's assault, now showed a flicker of something else. Not satisfaction or vindication, but a deep, profound sadness for what was about to unfold. "That's impossible," Blake stammered, his worldview crumbling in real time. "There's no record. We searched everything." "You searched everything at your clearance level," the woman in the black suit interjected, producing credentials that identified her as Agent Patricia Hayes, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. "Commander Mitchell's service record is classified at a level so far above your pay grade that you couldn't access it with a presidential order. Veterans facing discrimination in courtrooms need specialized legal representation. Disability rights attorneys understand both military law and 8A regulations. These legal experts fight for fair treatment, ensuring veterans receive entitled benefits and protection from discrimination. Many firms offer free consultations for service members, helping navigate complex VA claims and civil rights violations." The revelation hung in the air like a physical presence, transforming the atmosphere of the courtroom from one of mockery and contempt to something approaching awe. But the full impact of what was being revealed was only beginning to sink in. The revelation coming next will change everything. If you know a veteran who's faced similar discrimination, share this video with them. Like and comment "respect" if you stand with our disabled heroes. It was Prosecutor Fletcher who made the critical mistake. Unable to accept the complete reversal of everything he'd believed, he stood and pointed an accusing finger at Sarah. "This has to be some kind of elaborate deception," he declared, his voice high with desperation. "Just because someone in a uniform walks in here doesn't mean—" Fletcher's words were cut off as Admiral Carter pulled out a classified folder marked with red stripes and security warnings. "Judge Blake, Mr. Fletcher, what I'm about to show you requires everyone in this courtroom without appropriate clearance to leave immediately." Blake's hands were visibly shaking as he gripped his gavel. "You can't clear my courtroom. I have absolute authority here." "No, sir, you don't," Agent Hayes interrupted. "Not when it comes to matters of national security. Everyone without secret clearance or higher needs to leave. Now." There was a mass exodus as most of the gallery filed out, though several veterans with clearance remained, along with court staff and the principals in the case. Mark Sullivan stayed, his former corpsman rating apparently sufficient for what was to come. Once the doors were secured, Admiral Carter opened the folder and placed a series of photographs on the witness table. Even from a distance, those who could see them gasped. The images showed a combat zone, smoke and fire visible in the background. In the foreground, a figure in tactical gear was carrying not 1 but 2 wounded SEALs across sandy terrain. The figure's face was obscured by tactical equipment, but the body type and movement pattern were unmistakably female. "Operation Neptune's Hammer," Admiral Carter began, his voice taking on the formal tone of an official briefing. "Classified retrieval mission in a country we're not supposed to be in, against an enemy we're not officially fighting. SEAL Team 6 was ambushed. 13 operators were wounded or killed in the initial explosion. Commander Mitchell, then Lieutenant Mitchell, was the team's sniper, providing overwatch from an elevated position." He pulled out another photograph. This one showed the same female figure, now clearly engaging enemy positions, while wounded SEALs took cover behind her. When the team was pinned down, Lieutenant Mitchell left her secured position and entered the kill zone. She provided covering fire while dragging wounded operators to safety, one by one. She made 7 trips into that hell, under constant enemy fire. Sarah's hand had unconsciously moved to her abdomen, her fingers tracing something beneath her blazer. Those close enough could see her lips moving slightly, as if counting or perhaps reciting names. On the 7th trip, Admiral Carter continued, his voice growing quieter, more somber. An IED detonated directly beneath Lieutenant Mitchell. The explosion severed her spine at L2 and L3, causing immediate paralysis of her lower extremities. Despite this catastrophic injury, she continued to provide covering fire from a prone position for another 45 minutes until extraction arrived. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Even Blake had stopped trying to speak, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly like a landed fish. Agent Hayes took over the narrative. Lieutenant Mitchell saved 9 lives that day. Every single one of those SEALs she pulled from that kill zone survived because of her actions. The enemy force was eventually repelled, but at tremendous cost. Mitchell was the only member of her unit to survive the full engagement, though she paid for it with the use of her legs. "But why?" Blake finally managed to croak out. "Why isn't any of this in the official records?" "Because officially," Agent Hayes replied with a hard look at the judge, "Operation Neptune's Hammer never happened. It was a black operation in a country where we weren't supposed to have forces. The enemy we engaged was connected to governments we're officially allied with. Everything about that mission, including the heroism of Commander Mitchell, was classified beyond top secret." Sarah finally spoke, her voice carrying clearly in the silent courtroom. 9 lives for 2 legs. I'd make that trade again." The simple statement hit like a physical blow. Several people in the room were openly crying now, including court reporter Ashley Foster, who was trying to maintain her professional composure while tears streamed down her face. But Blake, in his desperation to salvage something from his shattered position, made one more attempt. "Even if all this is true, she still appeared in my courtroom without proper identification, without revealing her status." He was interrupted by Connor Allen, the insurance investigator, trying to slip quietly toward the exit. Agent Hayes noticed immediately. "Mr. Allen, please remain where you are. We have some questions about your investigation of Commander Mitchell." Allen froze, his face flushing red. "I was just doing my job. Judge Blake asked you to investigate a decorated war hero based on what evidence exactly?" Admiral Carter's voice had turned dangerous. Blake's face went from white to gray. The implications of what he'd done were finally, fully hitting home. He had publicly humiliated, threatened, and attempted to arrest a legitimate American hero, one whose sacrifice was so profound and whose service was so classified that her very existence was a state secret. Sarah reached into her jacket, the same movement that had made Adam Foster tense earlier, and this time withdrew a small digital recorder. She placed it on the table and pressed play. Blake's voice filled the courtroom, but it wasn't from today's session. This was from a phone call, clearly recorded without his knowledge. "I don't care if she's actually disabled or not," Blake's recorded voice said. "These veterans think they can milk the system forever, deny the claim. If she complains, we'll make her life so miserable she'll drop it. Same as we've done with hundreds of others." The recording continued, Blake discussing kickbacks from insurance companies for denied claims, strategies for discouraging veterans from appealing, and his contempt for what he called welfare queens in wheelchairs. 3 years, Sarah said quietly. "I've been documenting your systematic denial of veteran benefits for 3 years. Every denied claim, every veteran you've humiliated, every kickback you've received. It's all here." She placed a thick folder on the table, and Agent Hayes immediately took possession of it. "You were investigating me?" Blake's voice had risen to a near shriek. "You came here specifically to—" I came here to testify in a legitimate veterans benefits case, Sarah interrupted. James Rodriguez deserves his benefits, just like the 2,000 other veterans you've wrongfully denied over the past 5 years. My presence here wasn't about you, Judge Blake. It was about them. But when you attacked my service, my sacrifice, and my integrity, you made it about you. The sound Blake made was inhuman, part rage, part desperation, part the dying gasp of a career built on corruption and cruelty. In his fury and panic, he did the unthinkable. He lunged forward, reaching across his bench towards Sarah, his hands grasping for something, the metal, the recorder, perhaps Sarah herself. His fingers caught the collar of her blazer and pulled, the fabric tearing with a sharp ripping sound that seemed to echo through the courtroom. As the blazer pulled away from her shoulder and neck, the courtroom got its first real look at the price Sarah Mitchell had paid for her country. The scars were extensive and horrific. Burn marks covered her entire right shoulder and neck, the skin puckered and discolored in the distinctive pattern of an IED blast. Along her collarbone, surgical scars traced lines where doctors had fought to save her life. But most striking was the tattoo visible on her upper arm, a seal trident with Team 6 inscribed beneath it, and below that, a date, March 15, 2018, the date of Operation Neptune's hammer. The 3 seconds of absolute silence that followed felt like 3 hours. It was broken by Mark Sullivan's voice, barely above a whisper, but carrying clearly in the hushed courtroom. My God, you're not just any Ghost 7, you're the Ghost 7. The one part 2. The silence that followed the revelation of Rachel Stevens' identity as Ghost 7 lasted exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds that felt like 3 years to everyone present. Then, as if a dam had broken, the courtroom erupted into a chaos of voices, camera flashes, and movement. But through it all, Rachel remained perfectly still in her wheelchair, her eyes locked on Judge Harrison Pierce's crumbling face. Admiral Marcus Thompson was the first to break the tableau, stepping forward with measured precision. "Your Honor," he said, his voice dripping with irony at the title, "I believe you have some explaining to do about why you've been systematically destroying the lives of American heroes for money." Pierce's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his judicial robes hanging on him like a costume that no longer fit. Behind him, the American flag seemed to mock his presence. He had betrayed everything it represented. "I demand my attorney," Pierce finally managed to stutter. This is entrapment. She deceived the court." Rachel's laugh was short and sharp. "Deception? You want to talk about deception? Let's talk about Corporal Timothy Chen, 22 years old, who lost both arms to an IED. You told him he was exaggerating his disability while he sat in your courtroom with prosthetic arms. He killed himself 3 weeks later because he couldn't afford the specialized therapy he needed." She pulled out a photograph from her folder, a young Asian American man in marine dress blues, smiling at the camera. "His mother sent me this picture. She wanted someone to know her son existed, that he mattered. You reduced him to a denied claim number." Pierce stumbled backward, his face draining of all color. "I didn't know." "You didn't care," Rachel corrected sharply. "Every denial was worth $50,000 to you. Blood money paid for with veteran suicides." Senator William Crawford, still in handcuffs, tried once more to assert some control. "You can't prove any of this will hold up in court. Fruit of the poisonous tree. You gathered evidence under false pretenses." Agent Catherine Foster of NCIS stepped forward, her badge gleaming under the courtroom lights. "Actually, Senator, Commander Stevens was operating under sealed federal warrant number 789 Alpha, signed by the Attorney General himself 18 months ago. Every piece of evidence she gathered is not only admissible, but has been corroborated by parallel investigations from FBI, CIA, and military intelligence." The revelation sent another shockwave through the room. This hadn't been a rogue operation. It had been sanctioned at the highest levels of government. Tyler Brooks, the insurance investigator, suddenly bolted for the door. He made it 3 steps before Master Chief Daniel Tank Morrison clotheslined him with one massive arm, sending Brooks crashing to the floor. "Going somewhere?" Tank asked mildly, placing one boot on Brooks's back. "Because Commander Stevens isn't done with you yet." Rachel wheeled herself closer to where Brooks lay gasping on the floor. "Mr. Brooks, you documented my every movement for 4 months. You took 1,200 photographs of me, struggling with my wheelchair, fighting through physical therapy, dealing with muscle spasms that left me crying in pain. Tell everyone here, did you ever once think I was faking? Brooks's response was muffled by the floor, but Tank lifted him slightly. Answer the commander, Tank suggested in a tone that brooked no argument. No, Brooks gasped. I knew you were really paralyzed. The muscle atrophy, the spasms, the way you struggled to transfer from your chair, no one could fake that. Yet you filed a 300-page report claiming I was committing fraud, Rachel continued. You recommended denial of all benefits. You even suggested I should be prosecuted for stolen valor. Why? Brooks was crying now, snot and tears mixing on his face. Pierce promised me a bonus, $200,000 if I could make the fraud case stick. He said you were probably injured doing something stupid that you didn't deserve. Stop, Rachel commanded. Every excuse you make dishonors another dead veteran. She turned to address the packed courtroom, where more people were crowding in as word spread through the courthouse about what was happening. This is the system our veterans face. Insurance investigators who know they're lying, judges who sell justice for profit, senators who see wounded warriors as expense line items to be reduced. A man in the gallery stood up, Robert Martinez, wearing a Vietnam veteran cap. Commander Stevens, they did the same thing to us when we came home. Called us baby killers, denied Agent Orange caused our cancers, said our PTSD was just weakness. 40 years later, nothing changed until you exposed it. Rachel nodded respectfully to the older veteran. Sir, the investigation will review cases going back to the Vietnam era. Every wrongfully denied claim will be reconsidered. That's impossible, Crawford shouted. The cost, Admiral Thompson interrupted, is irrelevant compared to the debt we owe these warriors. Besides, Senator, we'll be seizing all assets from conspirators like you to fund the compensation. Your three-house, your yacht, your offshore accounts, all of it will go to veterans you helped destroy. The sound of helicopters grew louder outside, and through the tall courthouse windows, everyone could see military and federal vehicles surrounding the building. This was no longer just an arrest. It was the beginning of a massive operation. Emily Davis, the court reporter, raised her hand tentatively. Commander Stevens, should I keep recording? This seems beyond a normal court proceeding. Record everything, Rachel said firmly. The American people deserve to know exactly what was done to their veterans. Every word, every revelation, every name. A new voice spoke from the doorway, deep, gravelly, and carrying unmistakable authority. Well said, Commander. Everyone turned to see a man in a simple black suit, but his bearing screamed military despite the civilian clothes. More importantly, the Secretary of Defense himself walked beside him. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary announced, this is General James Mitchell, formerly Commanding General of Joint Special Operations Command. He's been overseeing the parallel investigation into foreign intelligence connections to this conspiracy. General Mitchell's scarred face turned toward Pierce. Judge Pierce, you've been taking money from Chinese and Russian intelligence services. They identified veteran care as America's Achilles heel. If they could break our promise to care for our wounded, they could destroy military morale and discourage enlistment. You didn't just betray veterans, you committed treason. Pierce collapsed into his chair, his body shaking. I want immunity. I'll tell you everything. Names, accounts, meeting locations. Immunity? Rachel's voice was ice cold. Tell that to Maria Rodriguez, whose husband, Sergeant First Class Diego Rodriguez, hanged himself after you denied his claim. Tell that to 8-year-old Tommy Washington, who found his father dead from an overdose because you denied his pain medication. Tell that to— Stop! Pierce screamed. Stop. They couldn't make it stop either, Rachel said quietly. The pain, the nightmares, the shame of being called liars after serving their country. You had the power to help them, and you chose profit instead. Advanced assistive technology and cutting-edge rehabilitation programs transformed the lives of severely disabled veterans. These comprehensive systems include brain-computer interfaces for paralyzed veterans, revolutionary prosthetics with sensory feedback, and virtual reality therapy for PTSD. Veterans can access these life-changing innovations through specialized VA centers focused on restoring maximum independence and quality of life. The Secretary of Defense stepped forward. Commander Stevens, the President has authorized Operation Restore Honor. Every VA facility, every benefits office, every insurance company involved in veteran care will be audited simultaneously. We estimate this will be the largest investigation in Department of Defense history. Rachel nodded, then turned to the 13 Navy SEALs who had arrived to support her. Gentlemen, I'm going to need your help. We have 43 cities to hit simultaneously, and I need operators I can trust. Tank Morrison grinned. Just like old times, Commander. Except this time, we're hunting bureaucrats instead of terrorists. Sometimes they're worse than terrorists, Spider Williams added. At least terrorists are honest about trying to kill us. Judge Pierce made one last desperate attempt to salvage something. My son! Colonel Mitchell Pierce commands a battalion in Afghanistan. If you prosecute me, it will destroy his career. Rachel's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. Your son is an honorable officer who has served with distinction. He'll be judged on his own merits, not your crimes. That's the difference between us, Your Honor. We don't punish children for their parents' sins. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. After reading it, she announced, Federal agents just raided Senator Crawford's office. They found a list of 1,200 veterans scheduled for claim termination. These were veterans the conspiracy planned to deny benefits to over the next 6 months. A woman in the gallery gasped. My husband is probably on that list. He's filed 3 appeals after being denied PTSD treatment. Ma'am, what's your husband's name? Rachel asked. Staff Sergeant Kevin Thompson, 82nd Airborne. Rachel scrolled through her tablet. Yes, he's here, marked for denial next Tuesday. The note says, claim PTSD is pre-existing condition unrelated to service. Your husband has 3 combat tours and a Bronze Star, correct? The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. He has nightmares every night. He can't work because of anxiety. We've lost our house, and I'm working 3 jobs to keep our kids fed. Rachel's jaw tightened. Ma'am, your husband's claim is approved effective immediately. Full benefits, backdated to his original filing 3 years ago. You'll receive approximately $96,000 in back benefits, plus ongoing support. The woman collapsed into sobs of relief, and several other veterans' family members began calling out their own cases. Rachel raised her hand. Everyone who has been denied benefits, we will review every case. Set up an emergency hotline. No veteran waits more than 48 hours for an answer. That's impossible, Crawford protested weakly. The bureaucracy alone. We're cutting through the bureaucracy, Rachel interrupted. Every denied claim gets automatic provisional approval while under review. No veteran suffers while we sort out the paperwork. This is justice in action. Share this with every veteran you know. Like and subscribe to follow the complete takedown of the conspiracy that betrayed our wounded warriors. These heroes deserve better, and now they're finally getting it. Agent Foster's phone rang constantly with updates from the expanding investigation. Commander, we've just arrested Deputy VA Secretary Thomas Mitchell. He had $4 million in offshore accounts tied to Chinese shell companies. Another call. Judge Patricia Hamilton in New York, arrested. Judge Robert Carson in Los Angeles, in custody. Insurance executives from Forward Health, Secure Life, and Patriot Care all arrested at their homes. With each announcement, the veterans in the gallery cheered. These were the people who had made their lives hell, who had denied legitimate claims while knowing veterans were suffering and dying. A young woman pushed through the crowd, Lieutenant Sarah Williams, Air Force, walking on prosthetic legs. Commander Stevens, I need to tell you something. I know who you are, what you did in Operation Neptune's Hammer. You saved my brother, Petty Officer First Class Marcus Williams. Rachel recognized the name immediately. Spider's sister. He talked about you constantly during recovery. Sarah nodded. He told me you went back for him when the building was coming down, that you dragged him out with your spine already shattered. You saved him so he could come home to us. He would have done the same for me, Rachel said simply. Maybe, but you actually did it, and then you spent 3 years pretending to be weak to save more veterans. Do you understand what that means to those of us who were told our service didn't matter because we're disabled? Before Rachel could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. A man in an expensive suit tried to push past the federal agents, shouting about congressional privilege. Rachel recognized him immediately. Congressman Richard Blake, chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee. This is outrageous, Blake shouted. You can't just arrest members of Congress. I have immunity. General Mitchell stepped forward. Congressman Blake, your immunity doesn't cover taking bribes to block veteran benefit legislation. We have recordings of you negotiating payments to kill bills that would have expanded veteran care. Blake's face went purple. Those recordings were obtained illegally. Rachel wheeled herself forward. Actually, Congressman, I recorded them myself during the Veterans Summit last year. You sat right next to me at the dinner, remember? You didn't even notice me, just another disabled veteran in a wheelchair. But I noticed you when you told insurance lobbyist Michael Chen that dead veterans don't file appeals. The quote sent a wave of rage through the room. Several veterans had to be physically restrained from attacking Blake. Blake tried to run, but Tank Morrison stepped into his path. Sir, I strongly suggest you surrender peacefully. You really don't want to make this worse. As Blake was handcuffed, Rachel pulled out another file. Congressman Blake personally blocked 17 bills that would have provided automatic approval for combat-related PTSD claims. Each time, he received payments from insurance companies totaling over $2 million. Meanwhile, an estimated 400 veterans died by suicide while waiting for those claims to be processed. The number hung heavy in the air. 400 preventable deaths because one congressman chose profit over people. Master Sergeant James Rodriguez, the double amputee who had been denied benefits, wheeled himself forward. Commander Stevens, I have a question. My claim was denied 6 months ago. Since then, I've lost my house, my wife left because of the stress, and I've been living in my car. What happens to veterans like me who lost everything while waiting? Rachel's expression softened. Sergeant Rodriguez, first, you're getting a hotel room tonight, and every night until we get you permanent housing. Second, you'll receive full back benefits plus compensation for losses directly related to the wrongful denial. Third, we're establishing emergency funds for veterans in crisis. No one lives in their car while waiting for benefits ever again. Who's paying for all this? Someone called out. The conspirators, Rachel replied. We've already frozen over $600 million in assets from those arrested today. Every penny will go to veterans they hurt. Tyler Brooks, still on the floor under Tank's boot, suddenly spoke up. I want to make a full confession. I have evidence on all of them. Pierce, Crawford, Blake, everyone. Rachel nodded to Tank, who let Brooks sit up. Start talking, Mr. Brooks. And remember, lies now mean additional charges later. Brooks's confession poured out like water from a broken dam. It was systematic. We had quotas, deny at least 70% of PTSD claims, 90% of traumatic brain injury claims. They said veterans were exaggerating, that they were just trying to get free money. But you knew better, Rachel prompted. Yes, Brooks admitted. I investigated Master Sergeant Anthony Miller. He had documented traumatic brain injury from 3 separate IED blasts. Brain scans showed clear damage, but I was told to write that he was malingering. He died 6 weeks later from a seizure caused by the untreated injury. Anthony Miller's widow, Patricia, stood up in the gallery. You killed my husband, she said, her voice shaking. He begged for help. He knew something was wrong with his brain, but you called him a liar. Brooks couldn't meet her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring him back, Patricia said. Sorry doesn't help my kids understand why their father is gone. Rachel intervened gently. Mrs. Miller, your husband's death will be classified as service-connected. You'll receive full survivor benefits, and his children will have their college education paid for. It doesn't bring him back, but his sacrifice will be honored. The courtroom doors opened again, and this time a CBS News crew entered, led by veteran correspondent David Chen. Commander Stevens, the American people need to hear this story. Will you speak to us? Rachel looked at Admiral Thompson, who nodded. The truth needs to be told, the Admiral said. Facing the camera, Rachel spoke clearly and directly. For 8 years, a conspiracy involving judges, politicians, and insurance executives has been systematically denying benefits to American veterans. They took bribes from foreign intelligence services to weaken America by breaking our promise to care for our warriors. Today, that conspiracy ends. The reporter asked, Commander Stevens, you were paralyzed saving fellow SEALs. Why risk everything for this investigation? Rachel's answer was simple but powerful. Because that's what we do. We don't leave anyone behind, not on the battlefield and not here at home. These veterans fought for America. The least America can do is fight for them. Comprehensive mental health programs designed specifically for combat veterans provide immediate intervention and long-term support. These evidence-based treatments include innovative therapies for PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and military sexual trauma. Veterans experiencing crisis can access 24/7 support through expanded helplines and walk-in clinics with no appointment necessary. As the cameras rolled, more veterans stepped forward to share their stories. Each tale was a variation on the same theme: legitimate claims denied, families destroyed, lives lost to bureaucratic greed. Private First Class Jennifer Mason, Army, spoke through tears. "I was sexually assaulted during deployment. When I reported it and filed for PTSD treatment, Judge Pierce said I was lying to get attention. I attempted suicide twice because I couldn't get help." Gunnery Sergeant Robert Taylor, Marines, showed his prosthetic arm. "Lost this in Fallujah. Insurance company said the amputation was not service-related because I couldn't prove the IED was enemy action, like I blew my own arm off for fun." Each story added weight to the mountain of evidence against the conspirators. Pierce, Crawford, and Blake sat in custody, watching their carefully constructed world of corruption crumble with each testimony. Rachel's phone buzzed with a priority message. After reading it, she announced, "The President has just signed an executive order. Effective immediately, all veteran benefit claims will be processed through a new independent agency staffed entirely by veterans. No more bureaucrats who never served making decisions about warrior care." The courtroom erupted in applause, but Rachel raised her hand for silence. She wasn't finished. "Additionally, the President is establishing the Never Again Commission, a permanent investigative body to prevent future corruption in veteran affairs. I've been asked to serve as its first director." Admiral Thompson stepped forward. "Commander Stevens will have full authority to investigate any suspected fraud or corruption related to veteran benefits. She'll have subpoena power, dedicated FBI and NCIS support, and a mandate to protect every veteran from exploitation." Pierce suddenly lurched forward in his restraints. "You don't understand what you've done. The people involved in this, they're powerful, connected. They'll come after you." Rachel turned her wheelchair to face him directly. "Let them come. I've faced Taliban fighters, Al-Qaeda operatives, and IEDs that took my legs. You think I'm afraid of corrupt bureaucrats and their threats?" "They'll destroy you," Pierce insisted desperately. "They already tried," Rachel replied calmly. "For 3 years, you all tried to break me. You humiliated me, dismissed me, called me a faker and a liar, but I kept going, kept gathering evidence, kept protecting my fellow veterans. That's what SEALs do. We complete the mission, no matter the cost." General Mitchell's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he announced, "We've just received intelligence from CIA. The Chinese handler running this operation, Colonel Liu Shen, is attempting to flee the country. He's at San Francisco International Airport." Rachel immediately turned to her SEAL team. "Tank, Spider, take Bravo team. Don't let him leave American soil." The SEALs moved out with the fluid precision that had made them legendary in combat zones. Within minutes, they were on helicopters heading to San Francisco. Back in the courtroom, more revelations continued to emerge. Agent Foster had been continuously receiving updates from the nationwide raids. "Commander, we've found something significant. There's a whole division within Secure Life Insurance dedicated to denying veteran claims. They call it the Warrior Rejection Unit." The cruel irony of the name sent another wave of anger through the veterans present. Foster continued, "They had a point system. 20 points for denying a PTSD claim, 50 points for denying traumatic brain injury, 100 points for denying a claim that resulted in the veteran's death. Employees got bonuses based on their points. They gamified killing veterans," someone said in horror. Rachel's expression was granite. "Every employee in that unit will be charged as an accessory to murder. Every denied claim that resulted in death will be prosecuted as negligent homicide." 2 hours later, Tank Morrison called in from San Francisco. "Commander, we have Colonel Liu in custody. He was carrying diplomatic papers and 40 pounds of classified documents about the conspiracy. He's claiming diplomatic immunity." "His immunity is revoked," General Mitchell said, loud enough for the phone to pick up. "He's been declared persona non grata. He can cooperate or spend the rest of his life in federal prison." As the afternoon wore on, the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. It reached into every level of government, every major insurance company, and had connections to foreign intelligence services from multiple hostile nations. But for every revelation of corruption, there was a story of heroism. Veterans who had fought the system for years, families who had refused to give up despite repeated denials, advocates who had kept pushing even when it seemed hopeless. Dr. Michael Harrison, a VA psychiatrist, stepped forward. "Commander Stevens, I've been documenting irregularities for 5 years. I have files on over 3,000 suspicious denials. I was told to stop investigating or lose my job, but I kept copies of everything." "You're a hero, Doctor," Rachel said. "Your documentation will help us restore benefits to thousands of veterans." Harrison shook his head. "The heroes are the veterans who kept fighting, despite being betrayed by their own country. I just did my job." As evening approached, the courtroom had become a command center for the largest investigation in veteran affairs history. FBI agents, military investigators, and VA officials worked together, coordinating raids and arrests across the country. Rachel had been working for 16 straight hours, but she showed no signs of fatigue. This was her mission, and she would see it through to completion. A young Marine, Private First Class David Anderson, approached hesitantly. He was maybe 19, fresh from boot camp. "Commander Stevens, ma'am, I'm supposed to deploy next month. After seeing all this, how they treat veterans when they come home, I'm scared." Rachel's expression softened. She beckoned him closer. "What's your name, Marine?" "Anderson, ma'am." "David Anderson. David, look around this room. See all these veterans? Every one of them served despite the risks. Not just the risk of combat, but the risk of being abandoned when they came home. But they served anyway, because that's what warriors do." She gestured to the ongoing investigation. "What you're seeing today isn't the system failing, it's the system being fixed. These criminals are being arrested because veterans refuse to give up. We protect each other, David. When you deploy, you'll protect your brothers and sisters in arms. And when you come home, we'll protect you." The young Marine straightened. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." As he walked away, Admiral Thompson approached. "You know, Commander, what you've accomplished here is unprecedented. A single person exposing corruption at this scale, from a wheelchair no less, it's going to be studied at military academies for generations." "I didn't do it alone," Rachel corrected. "Every veteran who shared their story, every family member who refused to give up, every honest official who documented corruption, they all made this possible. The system is finally changing. If you believe our veterans deserve better, share this story. Like and subscribe to support the ongoing fight for warrior justice. Together, we're ensuring no veteran is left behind." By midnight, the initial phase of Operation Restore Honor was complete. 437 arrests across 43 cities, 600 million in assets frozen, 12,000 wrongfully denied claims identified for immediate review. But in the quiet moments between the chaos, Rachel found herself thinking about the ones they couldn't save. The veterans who had died waiting for help, who had given up when the system betrayed them, who had lost everything fighting for benefits they had earned with their blood. She pulled out a small notebook she always carried, not for evidence, but for names. Every veteran's suicide she had learned about during her investigation was written there. 312 names, 312 warriors who should still be alive. Tank Morrison noticed her with the notebook. "The ones we couldn't save?" Rachel nodded. "I carry them with me. They deserve to be remembered." "You saved thousands more," Tank reminded her. "This investigation will prevent future deaths." "It's not enough," Rachel said quietly. "It will never be enough until the last veteran gets the care they deserve." The next morning brought new developments. Colonel Liu Shen had broken under interrogation, revealing the full extent of foreign involvement in the conspiracy. The plan was psychological warfare, General Mitchell explained to the assembled officials. Break the warrior culture by showing veterans they would be abandoned. Make military service unattractive to potential recruits. Weaken American military readiness without firing a shot. "How long had this been going on?" Admiral Thompson asked. "According to Liu, at least 12 years. It started small, a few corrupted officials, but grew into a massive operation. They estimate it cost America 15,000 veterans through suicide, overdose, and medical neglect." The number was staggering. 15,000 American warriors dead because of greed and foreign manipulation. Rachel absorbed this information, then made a decision. "We're expanding the investigation. Every suspicious veteran death in the past 12 years gets reviewed. If corruption contributed to their death, their families receive full compensation and a formal apology from the government." "The cost," someone started to say. The cost is irrelevant, Rachel interrupted. These people died serving their country, betrayed by their country. We owe them more than money, but money is a start. 6 months later, Rachel testified before Congress about the full findings of her investigation. The hearing room was packed with veterans, families, and media from around the world. Distinguished members of Congress, she began, reading from her prepared statement. The conspiracy I exposed didn't just steal money or deny benefits. It stole hope. It told warriors who had sacrificed everything that their country considered them expendable. She looked up from her notes, making eye contact with each committee member. But today, I can report that the system is being rebuilt. In 6 months, we've reviewed 40,000 claims, approved 38,000 previously denied benefits, and distributed $2 billion in back payments to veterans and their families. Senator Patricia Wallace, the new chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee after Blake's arrest, leaned forward. Commander Stevens, what do you see as the long-term solution to prevent future corruption? Rachel had prepared for this question. Senator, I propose 3 measures. First, a constitutional amendment guaranteeing veteran care as a fundamental right. Second, mandatory minimum sentences for anyone convicted of defrauding veterans. Third, a permanent oversight committee staffed entirely by disabled veterans who understand the challenges their brothers and sisters face. The proposals were radical, but the evidence Rachel had uncovered made them seem entirely reasonable. A year after the courtroom confrontation, Rachel attended the dedication of a new memorial in Arlington National Cemetery. It honored veterans who had died due to denied benefits, those killed by bureaucracy rather than bullets. She sat in her wheelchair before the black granite wall, reading name after name of fallen warriors who should have grown old, surrounded by grandchildren, instead of dying alone and forgotten. Margaret Thompson was there with her daughter, who had finally started speaking again after intensive therapy paid for by recovered corruption funds. Commander Stevens, Margaret said, my daughter wants to say something. The little girl, now 9, stepped forward shyly. Thank you for making them remember. My daddy was a hero. Rachel felt tears threaten, a rare occurrence for someone who had learned to compartmentalize emotion during years of combat. Your daddy was always a hero, sweetheart. I just made sure everyone knew it. As the ceremony continued, Rachel noticed a figure standing apart from the crowd, Judge Harrison Pierce's wife, Eleanor. She approached hesitantly, clearly uncertain of her reception. Commander Stevens, Eleanor said quietly, I wanted to apologize. I didn't know what Harrison was doing. If I had known... Mrs. Pierce, Rachel interrupted gently, you're not responsible for your husband's crimes. But now you know the truth. What matters is what you do with that knowledge. Eleanor nodded, then surprised Rachel by saying, I'm divorcing him and donating half of our assets to veteran charities. It won't undo the harm he caused, but maybe it can help someone. 2 years passed. The investigation had expanded internationally, exposing similar conspiracies in allied nations. Rachel had become a global symbol of disabled veteran advocacy, traveling the world to help other countries reform their veteran care systems. But she always returned to America, to the veterans who still needed protection. On a cold December morning, Rachel received a call that would lead to her next major investigation. A young soldier, Private Emily Foster, had discovered evidence that military contractors were selling defective body armor to troops in combat zones. They told me I was too junior to understand the technical specifications, Emily explained over the secure phone. But I know the armor won't stop the rounds it's supposed to. People are going to die. Rachel smiled grimly. Another conspiracy, another fight, another mission. Private Foster, send me everything you have. We're going to stop them before any warrior dies from defective equipment. 3 years after exposing the benefits conspiracy, Rachel was invited to address graduating Navy SEALs at Coronado. She was the first woman, and certainly the first wheelchair-bound speaker, to have that honor. Gentlemen, she began, looking at the young faces before her, you're about to join the most elite warriors in the world. You'll face enemies who want to kill you, terrain that wants to break you, and missions that seem impossible. She paused, letting her words sink in. But the hardest battle you might face is here at home, fighting for the benefits you've earned, fighting against those who see you as expendable once you're wounded. Know this, you will never fight alone. We protect each other, on the battlefield and off. One young SEAL raised his hand. Commander Stevens, do you regret the mission that paralyzed you? Rachel considered the question. I regret that I couldn't save everyone. I regret that 7 operators died before I could reach them. But regret the mission itself? Never. I saved 13 warriors who went home to their families. And being paralyzed led me to expose corruption that was killing thousands of veterans. Sometimes our greatest defeats become our most important victories. 5 years after the courtroom confrontation, Rachel received a visitor she hadn't expected. Tyler Brooks, the insurance investigator who had helped deny veteran benefits. He had served his reduced sentence and now stood before her, clearly nervous. Commander Stevens, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I need your help. Rachel studied him carefully. Prison had aged him, but there was something different in his eyes, genuine remorse rather than self-pity. What kind of help? She asked. I want to make amends. I've been volunteering at veteran homeless shelters, but I want to do more. I have inside knowledge of how insurance companies operate. I could help you expose more corruption, prevent more denials. It was an interesting proposition. Brooks had been part of the problem, but his insider knowledge could be invaluable. You understand that many veterans will never forgive you, Rachel said. Some lost everything because of your reports. I know, Brooks replied. I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can prevent it from happening to others. Rachel made a decision that surprised her staff. She hired Brooks as a consultant, using his knowledge to train investigators on insurance company tactics. It was controversial, many veterans were furious, but Rachel understood that sometimes former enemies could become valuable allies. The decision paid off. Brooks's information led to the exposure of 3 more insurance companies systematically denying veteran claims, resulting in another 200 arrests and recovery of $300 million. 7 years after Operation Neptune's hammer, Rachel underwent experimental stem cell treatment combined with cutting-edge neural stimulation therapy. The treatment was risky, but offered the possibility of regaining some function below her injury. The procedure was partially successful. She regained limited sensation and could stand with leg braces for short periods. It wasn't a miracle cure. She still needed the wheelchair for mobility, but it was progress. During her recovery, she received a visit from an unexpected group, the children of veterans who had died due to denied benefits. They had formed a support group and wanted to thank her for ensuring their parents' sacrifices were recognized. Among them was Tommy Washington, now 15, whose father had overdosed after being denied pain medication. Commander Stevens, my dad died thinking he was a failure, that the country he served thought he was lying about his pain. You proved he was telling the truth. You gave him back his honor. These meetings were always emotional for Rachel. She had saved thousands of veterans, but she couldn't save their loved ones who had already been lost to the conspiracy. On the 10th anniversary of the courtroom confrontation, a ceremony was held at the Pentagon. Rachel was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor, for her service to veterans. President Jennifer Martinez, herself a former Army officer, presented the medal. Commander Rachel Stevens embodies the warrior ethos: never quit, never surrender, never leave anyone behind. From a wheelchair, she accomplished what entire government agencies couldn't. She exposed and destroyed a conspiracy that was killing our veterans. Rachel accepted the medal, then surprised everyone by struggling to her feet using her leg braces. Standing took enormous effort, but she wanted to make a point. 10 years ago, they said I was too broken to matter, she said, her voice carrying across the silent audience. They thought paralysis meant powerlessness. They were wrong. Every disabled veteran has power. The power to serve, to contribute, to protect our brothers and sisters. We are not broken. We are not defeated. We are warriors, and warriors never quit. The standing ovation lasted 10 minutes. After the ceremony, Rachel met with the current VA secretary, a former Marine who had lost his leg in Iraq. Under his leadership, and with Rachel's oversight, veteran care had been completely transformed. Claim approval rates are at 92%, he reported. Average processing time is down to 2 weeks. Veteran suicide rates have dropped by 60%. These were the numbers that mattered to Rachel. Not arrest statistics or money recovered, but lives saved, families preserved, warriors protected. That evening, Rachel sat in her apartment, a specially modified space that allowed her full independence despite her disability. The walls were covered with letters from veterans and their families, thanking her for her investigation. But one letter stood out, framed on her desk. It was from Pierce, written from federal prison. Commander Stevens, I spend every day thinking about the veterans I betrayed. I know apologies are worthless, but I need you to know you were right. I chose money over honor, comfort over compassion. I betrayed everything the uniform represents. You, from a wheelchair, showed more courage than I ever possessed. I will spend the rest of my life in prison, but you will spend the rest of yours as a hero. That is justice. Rachel set down the letter and looked at a photo on her desk. The 13 SEALs she had saved in Operation Neptune's hammer. They were all still alive, all still serving in various capacities. Tank Morrison was now commanding SEAL Team 6. Spider Williams was training the next generation of special operators. Her phone rang. Another crisis, another conspiracy to investigate, another group of veterans who needed protection. This was her life now, her mission, her purpose. She answered the phone. Stevens here. How can I help? Because that's what warriors do. They help each other, protect each other, never leave anyone behind. From her wheelchair, Commander Rachel Stevens had proven that disability was just another obstacle to overcome, another challenge to conquer, another mission to complete. The investigation that had started with one corrupt judge had reformed the entire veteran care system, exposed foreign intelligence operations, and saved countless lives. But Rachel knew the fight was never truly over. As long as there were veterans who needed protection, she would be there, rolling into battle in her wheelchair, armed with determination and the unbreakable bonds of warrior brotherhood. The legend of Ghost 7 had evolved from the story of a SEAL who saved 13 operators to the story of a paralyzed warrior who saved thousands of veterans from bureaucratic betrayal. And she was just getting started. As she ended the call and prepared for the next mission, Rachel looked at the SEAL trident on her desk, the one she had placed in Pierce's courtroom so many years ago. Its motto had never been more true. The only easy day was yesterday. Every day since her injury had been hard. Every day fighting corruption had been harder. But she had never quit, never surrendered, never left anyone behind. Because that's what Navy SEALs do. That's what warriors do. That's what heroes do. They complete the mission, no matter the cost, no matter the obstacles, no matter how long it takes. And Commander Rachel Stevens, Ghost 7, paralyzed warrior, protector of veterans, would keep completing missions until her last breath. The war for veteran justice was far from over. But with warriors like Rachel Stevens fighting from wheelchairs, hospital beds, and positions of authority, America's veterans would never fight alone again. Never again would they be abandoned. Never again would they be betrayed. Never again would they be forgotten. That was her promise, her mission, her sacred duty. And Navy SEALs always complete their missions. Always. 5 years had passed since Rachel Stevens received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It was 2:47 a.m. when her encrypted phone rang, the one only 12 people in the world had the number for. She was instantly awake, her combat reflexes still sharp despite a decade in a wheelchair. Stevens, she answered, already reaching for the pistol in her nightstand. Commander, this is Admiral Thompson. We have a situation. How fast can you get to a secure line? Rachel was already transferring to her wheelchair. 3 minutes. Make it 2, this can't wait. Rachel rolled to her home office, a fortified room with signal-blocking walls and encryption equipment that would make the NSA jealous. She activated the secure connection. Go ahead, Admiral. Thompson's voice was tense. 40 minutes ago, a former Army Ranger named Staff Sergeant Michael Chen walked into FBI headquarters in D.C. He's carrying documents that he claims prove Judge Harrison Pierce wasn't the beginning of the conspiracy. He was middle management. Rachel felt her blood chill. Pierce had been the kingpin, or so they'd thought. What kind of documents? Chen says there's something called the Phoenix Protocol, a 50-year operation to systematically weaken America through institutional betrayal. Veteran benefits was just one tentacle. He claims there are similar operations in education, healthcare, law enforcement, even the military itself. Where is Chen now? That's the problem. He collapsed during the initial interview. Doctors found advanced polonium poisoning. He's got maybe 6 hours to live. He's asking for you specifically. Rachel was already pulling on clothes. Why me? Because he says you're the only one they're afraid of. The only one who can't be bought, threatened, or broken. His exact words were, Ghost 7 already died once for her country. They can't kill what's already sacrificed everything. 90 minutes later, Rachel was in a sterile room at Walter Reed Medical Center, looking at a dying man. Michael Chen was perhaps 35, but radiation poisoning had aged him 20 years in a matter of days. His hands shook as he pushed a titanium briefcase across the bed toward her. "Commander Stevens," he wheezed, "I was part of it. Part of Phoenix. For 8 years, I helped them identify veterans who could be turned, broken, or eliminated." "Why come forward now?" Rachel asked, noting the recording equipment capturing every word. "My daughter," Chen gasped. "She enlisted in the Marines last month. 17 years old, wants to be like the heroes she grew up hearing about. I realized I'd helped build a system that would destroy her the moment she got injured." He coughed, specks of blood hitting his oxygen mask. "I couldn't let her come home to the same betrayal I helped create." Rachel opened the briefcase. Inside were drives, documents, and photographs that made her stomach turn. She recognized some faces, judges, politicians, even military officers who had been cleared in her initial investigation. "Pierce reported to someone called the Architect," Chen continued. "Nobody knows their real identity. Even Pierce only knew them by voice. But the Architect has been running Phoenix for 20 years, placing operatives throughout the government." "How deep does this go?" Rachel asked. Chen's laugh turned into a rattling cough. "Remember Colonel Mitchell Pierce, Harrison's son who threatened to abandon his position?" Rachel nodded. "He wasn't Pierce's son. He was Phoenix operative placed there 15 years ago to eventually take command. There are hundreds like him, sleeper agents in uniform, waiting for activation." Rachel felt the weight of this revelation. Her investigation had been thorough, but she'd only scratched the surface. "There's more," Chen struggled to continue. "Your injury, Operation Neptune's hammer, it wasn't random. They knew you were there. They wanted Ghost 7 eliminated because psychological profiles indicated you'd never stop fighting, even paralyzed." The room seemed to spin. Rachel gripped her wheelchair's arms. "The IED was deliberately placed? The Taliban fighter who placed it was paid by Phoenix. They wanted you specifically wounded, not killed. A dead hero inspires others. A broken hero in a wheelchair was supposed to demoralize everyone." Chen's eyes met hers. "They didn't count on you being more dangerous paralyzed than you ever were on your feet." Before Rachel could respond, Chen's monitors began alarming. Medical staff rushed in, but he grabbed Rachel's wrist with surprising strength. "The Architect is planning something called Final Dawn, complete institutional collapse within 5 years. Veteran care was the test run. Check the Phoenix files. Facility Delta 7, Wyoming Mountains." His eyes rolled back, and the monitors flatlined. The medical team worked frantically, but Rachel knew death when she saw it. Chen was gone, taking crucial information with him. Admiral Thompson entered the room, followed by General Mitchell and the new FE director, Patricia Hayes, the same agent who had helped arrest Pierce years earlier. "What did he give you?" Thompson asked. Rachel handed over the briefcase but kept one item, a photograph that had fallen out. It showed Chen with other men in suits, standing in front of a mountain facility. In the background, barely visible, was a sign. "Delta 7 Research Station. We need to verify everything," Director Hayes said, already calling for forensics teams. But Rachel was studying the photograph. One face in the background, partially obscured, seemed familiar. She'd seen those eyes before, but where? Her secure phone rang. Unknown number. Impossible on this encrypted line. "Don't answer that," Thompson warned. Rachel answered anyway. "Stevens." The voice was electronic, disguised but somehow still menacing. "Hello, Ghost 7, or should I say, the woman who should have stayed in her wheelchair and minded her own business." "The Architect, I presume," Rachel said calmly, gesturing for the others to start tracing. "Such a pedestrian name. I prefer to think of myself as a gardener, pruning America's dying branches. Veterans who can't contribute, the elderly who drain resources, the disabled who demand accommodation. You understand, being one of them yourself. What I understand is that you're a traitor who's about to spend life in federal prison." The laugh was distorted but genuine. "My dear Commander, you still don't grasp the scope of this. When Chen mentioned hundreds of operatives, he was being conservative. We have thousands. Judges, doctors, teachers, police, soldiers, people you trust, people you've worked with, people who saluted you while reporting your every move to me. Then why call? Why reveal yourself?" Because I want to offer you a choice. Join us and help build a stronger America, free from the burden of the weak. Or continue fighting and watch everyone you've saved be systematically destroyed. Starting with those 13 SEALs from Operation Neptune's hammer. Rachel's blood turned to ice. You touch them. I already have, Commander. Check the news. Admiral Thompson was already pulling up his phone. His face went pale. There's been an accident. Tank Morrison's convoy in Syria hit an IED. He's in critical condition. The architect's voice continued. Accidents happen in dangerous places. Spider Williams might have a training mishap. The others might find their families targeted. All 13 could be gone within a month, and it would all look perfectly legitimate. What do you want? Rachel growled. Stop investigating Phoenix. Declare the conspiracy fully exposed with Pierce's conviction. Retire quietly, and your 13 saved SEALs stay saved. Continue, and you'll attend 13 funerals. The line went dead. The room erupted in activity. Hayes was coordinating protection details for the 13 SEALs. Thompson was contacting military intelligence. Mitchell was securing Chen's evidence. But Rachel sat still, her mind racing. The architect had made a crucial mistake. They'd revealed they were afraid. If Phoenix was as powerful as claimed, they wouldn't need to threaten. They'd simply act. They're scared, she said quietly, and everyone stopped. This call, the threats, it's desperation. Chen's information must be more damaging than we realize. She looked at the photograph again, and suddenly she knew where she'd seen those eyes. Her blood went cold. Admiral, she said slowly, I need you to do something without question. No communication through normal channels, no digital trails. Thompson recognized her tone. What is it? I need you to personally verify the location of every official who's helped with the veteran investigation. Not their reported location, their actual physical location. Use only people you trust completely. You think one of them is the architect? Rachel looked at the photograph one more time. Those eyes, that jawline, the way the figure stood. She'd been staring at the architect for years without knowing it. Someone who'd been close to the investigation, who knew every move they made, who'd been perfectly positioned to control both sides. I don't think, Rachel said quietly. I know. She turned her wheelchair to face Director Hayes, Admiral Thompson, and General Mitchell. One of them, someone in this very room, was the architect. Chen had said the enemy was among those they trusted most. We have a mole, Rachel announced. Someone at the highest level has been playing both sides. They helped expose Pierce to maintain their cover while protecting the larger Phoenix organization. The three officials looked at each other with sudden suspicion. The trust that had bound them shattered in an instant. Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Very good, Ghost 7. But knowing there's a traitor and identifying them are different things. You have 72 hours before Final Dawn accelerates. Choose wisely. The wrong accusation means 13 funerals. She looked at each face in turn. Thompson, who had supported her from the beginning. Mitchell, who had provided crucial intelligence. Hayes, who had arrested Pierce. One of them had orchestrated everything, using her investigation as cover for their real agenda. But there was another possibility. What if the architect wasn't any of them? What if it was someone even closer? Someone she'd never suspect? Her phone rang again. This time, it was Tank Morrison calling from his hospital bed in Syria. Commander? His voice was weak but clear. The IED, it wasn't random. The triggerman said something before he died. He said, the 7 must fall for the Phoenix to rise. They're coming for you, ma'am. All of Phoenix is coming for you. Rachel felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders again. She'd thought exposing Pierce was the end of her mission. Instead, it had been the opening battle in a war she didn't know she was fighting. Tank, can you travel? Doc says I'll need a wheelchair for a few months, but I can move. Get to DC, bring the others, all 12. We're going to need everyone for this. Ma'am, some of us are deployed. I don't care if you have to go AWOL. Phoenix has infiltrated everything. The only people I can trust are the ones I bled for in that canyon. She ended the call and turned back to the three officials, one of whom might be her greatest enemy. We're going to Delta 7, she announced. Whatever Phoenix is planning, the answer is in that facility. That's exactly what they expect, Hayes said quickly. Too quickly. Rachel noted the reaction. Then we'll give them what they expect, but not how they expect it. She pulled out Chen's documents and found what she was looking for. shipping manifests for Delta 7, medical equipment, advanced computers, and massive quantities of chemicals that had no legitimate research purpose. They're not planning to destroy institutions, Rachel Rios. They're planning to replace them, create a crisis so severe that Phoenix operatives become the only solution. They'll step in as saviors while being the architects of the destruction. Her phone buzzed one final time. A single photo appeared, her 13 saved SEALs, each image tagged with their current location, their family's addresses, their vulnerabilities. The message was clear: stop investigating or lose everyone you fought to save. Rachel looked at the wheelchair that had been her prison and liberation for a decade. She'd sacrificed her legs saving those 13 warriors. Now she might have to sacrifice everything else to save them again, and the entire country with them. "Admiral," she said formally, "I need you to do something that goes against everything we've been taught. I need you to trust no one, not the Pentagon, not the intelligence agencies, not even the people in this room. Phoenix has had 50 years to infiltrate. We have 72 hours to stop them." "What's the plan?" Thompson asked. Rachel smiled, the cold, calculated smile of a predator who'd just spotted prey. "We're going to let them think they've won. Let them believe Ghost 7 is finally broken. And when they lower their guard to deliver the killing blow—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The architect had made the classic mistake of threatening a Navy SEALs team. They'd forgotten the most important rule: SEALs don't leave anyone behind, and they never, ever quit. Rachel Stevens had completed impossible missions from a wheelchair. Now she was about to undertake her most dangerous operation yet, hunting an enemy who could be anyone, anywhere, even standing right beside her. The hunt for the Phoenix had begun, and Ghost 7 was operational.